Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Super.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, Nishant, please go ahead.
Yes, Kaustav. Great presentation. Thank you for the insights. I agree with you. For the traditional education, what we have all gone through, it's great. It can be quickly moved to the online format. E-learning serves them well. But what about the other aspects of, let's say, holistic development for the child? STEM learning, for example, physical education. These are some of the aspects which will forcibly be overlooked because there is no real way you can bring them online. You need to have a STEM lab to do robotics and other experiments, for example. So what is the thinking for that?
Nishant, you are absolutely spot on. Why STEM? Even a bio lab, physical lab, physics lab, or a chemistry lab, this is something which you can't, unless and until yes, as I said, potentially some edtech companies take up this challenge and then saying that look, we could kind of give this particular experience virtually. If you ask me right now, no, all our lab activities are closed, and we don't even have a solution to that. See, I'll tell you, the transition from offline to online was a big challenge. It is not something which is easy. It's extremely difficult. Just imagine to kind of really train 1,500 teachers. It was a task for us. And I'm sure when I talk about this, same thing is being done by other schools. In fact, I know tons of schools which are literally doing zero activity. So United World College, it's a very large school in Singapore, one of the best schools, have no idea as to how to conduct virtual classes. All that they're essentially doing is kind of sending certain YouTube video links to parents, certain guides that their teachers have prepared and asking children to kind of browse through certain websites, etc. There is zero interactivity, there is zero briefing by a teacher. They have absolutely no clue. And now they essentially saying is that, okay, let's kind of go and get Zoom licenses. The UWC CEO called me up saying that, look, this is what the pricing is. So what's your sense? Now Zoom has become smarter. Suddenly the users have kind of gone from 10 to 200 million. Enterprise licenses they charge. I think for individual it's free. You can download the app. But enterprise license is fairly expensive. And the licenses that we hold where we can have 300 participants into a meeting are expensive. So the transition from offline to online is a big challenge. And I completely agree with you. Emotional, social, physical development, it's people will have to innovate. People will have to kind of come up with good ideas. Maybe 1 month down the line, we'll also focus our energies on that. Currently, everybody is hoping that look, come May end, perhaps, or after summer break, maybe by July, things should be somewhere closer to normal. But yes, you're absolutely right. This is something that everybody in the education sector need to kind of think through and see how we can kind of evolve.
Rahul?
Yeah, hi. KB, can you see me?
Hi, Rahul, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, how are you, man?
All good, all good.
Wonderful presentation. Actually, I had this thing. Okay, I was just going through, I mean, like, how they will, because I think some countries like in Malaysia and all that, next term is also going to be online, you know. So they were saying like now they have reached the consensus like how to grade the people, especially for IGCSE or, L6 for IB and all that. So parity, I mean, like how, and a lot of parents have complained that their kids have worked very hard this term, but they cannot reap the benefit. So they can optionally take an exam in October, but it will be very tough on the student because all the revision and all the thing they have done from 8 till this term, they have to carry on that one and still prepare for the 11th term. So what is your advice, and what is the basically news kind of a thing going around, like, about scoring and how it's supposed to be? Any idea about that?
Rahul, I think you're spot on. See, naturally, as the schools were caught off guard, so were the boards of education. So, for example, CBSE and ICSE boards in India. So, CBSE announced that whatever exams are there, they're not going to conduct anymore. And I think they have kind of given certain guidelines how the school students are going to be graded. Still, those guidelines are not very clear, and we are still awaiting for them. Same for IBO, International Baccalaureate Organization, very forward-looking, completely caught off guard. And I think they simply did an hands up and surrendered. and said saying that look, we are going to cancel the IBDP exam for this year, which is I think extremely sad for some of the students who really kind of put their heart and soul to kind of prepare for the exam. And with the whole idea that look, they'll kind of crack the exam and perhaps kind of get the fantastic university placements. Again, to that extent, yes, it is some sort of injustice which is being done to the students. And then these boards of education are asking schools to kind of students on predictive basis, which is fairly common practice for IBO. Every year we the predictive scores, and generally students use the predictive scores to make
applying for the colleges. Yeah,
absolutely. Because the US college applications, they kind of start pretty early, by October, November. Anyway, the IB results are not there, so they use the predictive scores, etc. But I think this is a challenge which people will have to find a solution, and the solution will come very easily. And I think
it's good. It's good to hear, KB, that you found a solution already in India. So it was much more easy. Otherwise, people were still struggling elsewhere how to cope up with this,
So especially I think computer adaptive tests are, I think more and more boards will encourage that. Right now they are not prepared, so that's the reason why. But I'm sure by next year or next time is any such disruption happens, they'll be ready. Then they'll essentially say, oh, GRE, GMAT, everything is now computer adaptive test. Why can't the IBDP is online?
And you were very correct. You were very correct also when you said about, when it comes to going to school, there's another charm, right? You're meeting your friends, you're going out, change of environment, physical activities, whatever and all that. So that will be there. But I mean, like, this is the next step because we are, my son is also in international school like yours. So we have seen, I mean, like, how different it became altogether, So, yeah, it was a very nice, very nice thing. And Nikhil, thanks. Keep doing this.
Yeah. See, one of the big things of the school or any learning is, of course, peer learning. Otherwise, we would never know KB. It was just online. KB, Rahul, we were all roommates. So, pleasure to hear you, KB.
Roommate, yeah.
We were all roommates, friends. So, that's the charm of learning, whether it's AIM or whether it's K-12. KB, one thing catches my eye, which is a positive coming from your presentation. I want your thoughts on something. You said today a school could possibly attract students worldwide.
Yes.
Now, have you done some analysis that fine, we can get students from all over the world, but what are the legal norms around schools having attendance and all that? Let's say in India you have to attend certain number of classes to get a degree.
Yes.
Any idea about international boards, how they go about this? Thanks.
Yes, so there is a certain attendance. So generally, international boards leave it to the school's policy to decide. So then they'll say that the attendance would be as defined by the school. And generally, schools do not allow a student having attendance less than 80% to appear for board exams, unless and until there is a valid reason. Up to 20%, schools are flexible. Of course, we will not tell that to parents because the obligation is on school to kind of make sure whatever time lost is recovered. But that is the policy and the guideline. But as the virtual learning picks up, people will move to classes. And when you say classes, the classes could be virtual classes or the physical classes. The moment you try and mark your attendance on a virtual class, it is as good as you joining school from anywhere. To kind of share an example with you, right now we have students in India who are going to join our school in Japan. So they wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning or perhaps even at 5:30. The Japan school starts at 9 o'clock. Japan is 3 hours ahead of India. So it's 6 o'clock in the morning and these children are joining the classes on Zoom virtually for our campus in Japan. And same, we have cases of Indian students in India joining the UAE classes, similarly for Singapore. But I'm just kind of giving an extreme example of Japan, where there is really a 3-hour time difference. And yet students and parents, I think more importantly, parents are doing that because they don't want the child to kind of sit at home. At least they have this particular solution because they've withdrawn from the existing school. There's no way that they can kind of go back to the same school. And rather than the child sitting ideally at home, they are essentially encouraging this practice. So this tells me a story saying that look, there is going to be an opportunity for potentially a virtual learning. I think MOOC, we've already seen both its success as its failure. But I think in the K-12 space, perhaps online learning, virtual learning is going to be a reality pretty soon. And schools will have to be open to that particular idea. Once you have this, we will have an issue. Yeah, hi Nikhil, go ahead.
I have a question. Yesterday, I had a Google Hangout with the current batch. Now, unfortunately, this is the only batch at AIM who have to come back home and do online classes. Now, yours is K-12, from kindergarten to 12th standard. But AIM is all about CP and the K-12,
Yes.
correct? So yesterday,
Yes.
I had a Google Hangout with them, and they were exasperated and frustrated, saying that, we are not able, we don't know how our gradings will happen. What will happen to our action consultancy, and all those things. So if it's possible, two of them have logged on to this chat. One is Vasu and another is Amrut Arole. From your experience, how can you take this and reassure them or give them some thoughts so they can put up to the school? Because at the moment, even the school is in a flummox, is a very fluid situation. They had sent an email to the program head 2 weeks back, and the program had told them that he will come back, and 2 weeks have passed and nothing has happened. So today, because you are incidentally there, coincidentally, can you just share your thoughts from the AIM perspective, what can be done? Thank you.
Yes, Nikhil, I think it's true. I think both the platforms, Zoom Meeting and Microsoft Teams, do allow interactivity like this. I think, of course, it will never have the flavor of rebuttal, which we used to kind of do to a great extent in CPs, but still it is possible. And I think with AIM, perhaps Zoom meetings with some security should be a good solution. So the solution is very simple, that for each and every student, there is a unique, meeting ID is common, but the password could be unique. So essentially, you will have your own password so that a third party person cannot come in, or automatically you can set up a common password so that only that particular batch is there. And typically at AIM, you actually have a professor who's a facilitator. So he essentially opens the case and then put it back to the floor. So he can very well do that. But the question is, are the AIM professors, their comfort with technology, how they want to kind of conduct, that is going to be a challenge. So same thing for us, for our teachers. So some of my teachers are so good in terms of whiteboard. The first thing was saying that, look, sir, how can I teach using an online whiteboard? I want to kind of go and write. So some of the teachers were asking us, saying that, look, can you allow me to put up my own camera so that at least I can project what I'm going to do. But some places it's not easy, because you would want to give a uniform education to the students, and then you have to kind of say no to such innovative ideas, saying that, sorry, I can't, because then the expectation becomes automatically for all other teachers. So we are saying is that, no, you have to use the whiteboard in Zoom itself. The second part, I think, which is the Action Research Consulting, or MRR. I think maybe Vasu and your friend, the entire world today is working from home, and I'm sure everybody who's on this call perhaps will agree to me that we are working harder. At least when I used to kind of go to school, I used to reach there at 9 o'clock. I used to kind of leave at 6 o'clock and then kind of conduct some of my classes, or conduct some of my calls later in the evening if I would want. But now working from home, it is literally non-stop. Yeah, it starts somewhere at 8:30 in the morning, because people are saying anyway, everybody's sitting at home, or do an early morning call, and it kind of sometimes stretches to 9:30, 10 o'clock, because we are working in different geos. So I'm kind of wondering, where is that work-life balance suddenly disappeared for me? It is completely disappeared, because even we are working from home, but it's kind of just taking far more time for all of us. So the point which I'm going to make, if that is the reality, that the entire world is going to kind of work from home, what stops us from doing action research consulting also online? For example, this morning I had a long 2-hour call with PwC Consulting. They're kind of doing an assignment for us. We are part of Singapore government Scale Up SG program, where they have identified, handpicked 25 high growth companies, and we are one of them. And the idea behind that is both consulting companies, PwC and McKinsey, are working with us to really scale up our operations. Now, this is something we would want to do physically, face to face, but what can you do? You can't go out, you can't kind of meet personally, and then therefore we are using Zoom meetings to kind of interact and work with each other. So PwC Consulting is delivering, so is McKinsey. So why can't an AIM graduate exactly deliver that? All that you need to do is to kind of download a Zoom app, and then that's it. That allows you to kind of go and do a lot of activities. Google Hangouts is even easier. So you could potentially do that, which I think I understand from Nikhil, you're already doing that. I think in this uncertain times, people will have to kind of think coolly, but implement fast. I mean, that's what is the thing. When we were deciding, my mantra to our team was very clear, saying that, look, I'm going to give you at best a day's time. Tomorrow, tell me what you're going to implement, because implementation is the single biggest challenge. If you tell me that you're going to take 7 days just to tell me what technology to use, I'm not interested. I will go with Zoom because I have that. I know how to use it. My focus is going to be an implementation. So I think in these uncertain times, it is the implementation and your ability to be as fast and as quick at implementation is going to really win the race for you.
I also wanted to ask one thing, as in when you said the online thing and all, how do the lower levels actually students actually take to it? As in the higher level can actually adapt to it. They can operate these system devices and all. How do you keep them
absolutely. You're spot on. So for kindergarten children, we are asking parents to help. They can't do that. So every day we are requesting parents to please help the children to kind of log in into Zoom meetings. And what we are doing, the kindergarten classes, we are kind of doing kind of a first 2-hour sessions, which is typically a 40 minutes, some sort of interactive activity. Then for 15 minutes, the children are asked to do at home. We are asking parents to help them. So you would want them to kind of write something, or you would want to do some activity, which we are sharing either online. So there's some support of parents is required, because they need to kind of move across 2 apps. So we have this Zoom meetings, and then we have another app which we send some of the worksheets to students, which is more in terms of online activity. Then they kind of take a break where we kind of, we've done some roster where we've identified certain activities that they need to kind of do it at their own end. There again, we need some parental interaction and intervention, and then we kind of come back. So you are right, for kindergarten, unsupervised virtual learning, at least today, we don't have a solution. We are also thinking about it, but it is extremely difficult here to capture the imagination for a young child. It's very difficult. We also see ourselves when the teacher is talking, half of them are not even looking at screen. They are doing some different activity. Earlier we had a chat feature, so children chat to each other, disable that, etc. But yes, we need some thinking on that. So potentially we are kind of looking at some companies to come up with some innovative solutions which will allow us to schools to engage kindergarten children pretty well.
I think there are two people, Pamela and Sood. So I think Pamela's hand was first initially.
Yes, thank you so much. Kostap, thank you so much for the presentation. I really, really enjoyed every single part of it. Because from the part of the world where I am, it's Kuwait, Middle East. And we are like facing a certain problem between the private sector of schools and the governmental, the public sector. Now, even with no infrastructure for the e-learning, the private sector was able to integrate or find channels just to make sure that each and every single student is engaged in their virtual classes, rather with Zoom, Google Classroom. The French school where my kids are, they already bought a platform called Classiliovia, where even the lower grades in KG are engaged, because they can like write and circle on the screen or the tablet, and then the teacher can like see what they are doing, and it's really interactive. Now, my concern would be for this part of the public schools where maybe financially there are restrictions for them to implement certain platforms to get this continuity in the e-learning going on, especially now or maybe for later after the COVID-19 pandemic. So how do you think that the e-learning would be like in parts replacing this physical education?
Pamela, going ahead, I think it will not perhaps replace the physical education because, as I said earlier, or somebody else also pointed out, the physical, emotional, social development of children, it's going to be a challenge to do it virtually. So the e-learning would be an element, but still schools will do operate physically. But you're spot on in terms of the public schools, the challenges in different countries. So countries such as India, where the public schools, government schools have very poor infrastructure, perhaps even the classroom themselves don't have a computer machine, it's a big issue. And therefore, to kind of expect these schools to do something is not going to be possible. So Delhi government, which is kind of running their schools very well, I understand they've also implemented some e-learning online platforms, and those have kind of become model schools for India. Governments in Singapore, which have all the resources, very rich schools, the government schools are top class. They essentially kind of prepared themselves for 3 weeks. So people say that that is the reason why the lockdown was delayed in Singapore, to allow our government schools to prepare themselves for home-based learning. And we kind of got some early feedbacks from them saying that this is what they've done. So quickly, iPads were bought in, machines were kind of delivered to each and every teacher. Some of the students from lower rung, they were given some support. The schools still operate for a very small number of students who can't stay at home or who can't study at home, so they can go to the school and still go and do that e-learning, virtual learning from the school itself. I think that's how different public schools have reacted. I understand in the US, some of the districts are very forward-looking, but some of the districts are not doing at all anything. The schools are completely closed, and they've said is that, look, all the children are promoted. They've kind of completely left to the parents to kind of look at their children's performance. But some good school districts, like in LA, fantastic work is happening. But in Michigan and some of the other states, where I have some friends, they don't have very positive words to talk about it.
We have 5 minutes left and last 3 questions. Prerit, Jeet, and
Yes.
Vasu. So I would, if you don't mind, Prerit, let me give a chance to the current batch. We'll start with you. You'll get a chance. Vasu, you go ahead. If you don't mind, Prerit.
No issues. I don't mind. No issues.
Oh,
Vasu,
thank you,
go
sir.
ahead.
Sir, actually, I'm working with 2 schools right now. They approached me after this pandemic start. The thing is, they don't want to spend anything because they don't have the budget, and now they have to implement this online classes and everything. But the thing is, now the students have the devices, not or the internet, not the school have the facilities. So what they are doing is they're suspending the whole term or whatever the left, and promoting the students directly to the next level. Except the K-12, which has the board exams, which was supposed to be conducted, but I'm not sure what's happening. But they're promoting the students without any exams or anything.
So, Vasu, there is nothing surprising. Lots of schools in India are doing that. So I know a top school in Pune called as Bishops. They have suspended all the classes. All students have been promoted to next class. So I think this is something which is absolutely okay. Just to give you an example, we have a school in Surat, and by and large, the parent profile is very different. They are not, most of them have their own businesses. It's a business community. Education-wise, they aren't highly qualified people. And we are kind of operating in Surat through mobile devices. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has some sort of data plan on that. Of course, that data is slightly expensive. But that's where our teachers themselves are also kind of conducting classes on mobile phone, because some of them don't have computers, and because of lockdown, even though the computers are in school, we are not able to physically take them to their residences, and they don't have notebook or an iPad, so they are using mobile phones, and so is the students. So somewhere we'll have to make some adjustment. Right now, everybody is thinking that, look, the COVID-19 will be over pretty soon. But if this really continues, then yes, I mean, it's going to fundamentally change how schools operate.
Prerit?
Yes, Nikhil, right.
Yeah.
So can I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Kaustav, thank you. It was a very interesting presentation. Basically, you talked about, this COVID-19 COVID-19 disruption and how, on a quick note basis, your organization has operated in a dynamic environment. I have one simple question. You also are aware that, there is another ecosystem associated with schools, which is the daycare ecosystem.
Correct.
So, they also copy a lot of these models beyond just holding on the kids for a couple of hours, but they also do a lot of e-learning initiatives. So as a, I would say player in the industry, the one who is observing this since quite some time, the historical trends and what has happened with this disruption, where do you see this daycare, ecosystem to get on to in coming months?
See, right now, all daycares are closed.
Agree, but in coming months, I'm saying.
In coming months, again, I think this is an industry which will suffer the most if the proportion of workforce continues to work from home. So it's very simple. If I'm a parent and if, why do I send my child to daycare? Because I'm not at home.
I'm thinking it from the business perspective. So, do you think the daycare folks may also, because there are some daycares, I even know from my kids' perspective, this Clay, IPSA and all here in Delhi, they basically are organizing again e-learning initiatives, but that's like, repetition of things. Perhaps they are, ensuring that, future cash flow stream works out for them. But for them to, strive over this environment, what could be the differentiating factors, similar to what is happening with schools?
One key point, Prerit, which I have realized or which we are kind of getting feedback is the screen time. See, essentially, I have a daughter who's in grade 5. So she essentially is also saying that, looking continuously at screen, I have an issue. So actually, in virtual learning, we will have to kind of do those adjustments where how do we kind of smartly reduce the screen time. So that challenge daycare will also feel. And that's the reason why we have kept our kindergarten classes less than 3 hours, where effectively the online screen time is only 2 hours. So daycares to kind of try and think of virtual learning, which means high screen time is going to be a challenge. Perhaps then they'll have to kind of come up with some different models where some activities are kind of going to be done off screen. Maybe they'll have to kind of think through a little bit more as to how they want to kind of do that. But really, personally speaking, I see a big issue of COVID-19 on the daycare industry, on the childcare industry.
Right. I think you did touch upon on this physical chemistry, biolabs and all, and even the STEM learning, which Nishant asked that question. And I got your point. Thank you.
The last question, Abhijit, please go ahead.
Hi, Kaustubh. Very nice and concise presentation. This is regarding K-12 schools in India specifically. So there were recent news articles which said that schools have been asked to not charge fees. So has that really gone up to CBSE and IB schools, or it is only for public run schools?
No, it is to everybody. Forget about any board of education, it is to everybody. And the directive is right now come from 2 states, and we hope other states don't follow. Those are Karnataka, where they've said is that you can't charge any fee for the next academic year. And luckily in Karnataka, the academic year starts in June. And Noida or in Uttar Pradesh, because we have school in Noida, where initially was exactly what you said. They said that no, you can't charge any fee for the current academic year, which is already started in the month of April, till our further order. Further order has kind of come, which essentially saying that, look, you can charge, but don't charge in the month of April, charge in the month of May. And if a parent is not able to pay any fee, allow them to pay till November of this year. So cash flow is an issue for schools because a lot of parents will not be able to pay, which is a reality. Right. This is going to be true across all countries, because once the COVID-19 impact abates, that's where we will see the economic impact. Because right now everything is locked down, so you can't see. But everywhere, I think worldwide, the GDP is going to kind of shrunk by 3 percentage points. So countries like India, from 5.5% growth to now 1.5% growth, is effectively de facto recession. Because that's where I think the economic hardships are going to happen. And that's where private schools are going to face the brunt. So we ourselves are also preparing for that. How do we kind of control our costs? So we have also kind of called force majeure clauses. We are talking to our landlords, because most of our schools are leased properties. We are also telling them, saying that, look, I'm not able to collect fee. How do you expect me to pay rent to you? I would first want to pay salaries to our teachers, etc. So I think these are very real challenges, and people will have to respond to that, which I'm sure all private schools must be doing. We also are kind of preparing ourselves for the larger challenge of the economic uncertainty, potentially economic downturn or recession across our schools.
So,
Thanks.
Thank you, Kaustubh, for answering all the questions with great simplicity and in depth, and also covering the wide range within such a short span. And thank you very much.
I hope it was not too fast because I do speak a little bit faster, but I hope people were able to follow.
No, it's good. You spoke fast, so we could accommodate the questions. So it's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And today it was an excellent talk. And I know you had a little worry because Star Hub there is down at many places in Singapore. But I think our webinar is blessed by the Almighty. So thank you very much.
Luckily, I think HubSpot has supported, of course, for a little bit of technical glitches. Screen sharing has become a little bit less effective.
So you are the second of your batchmate who has spoken. Coincidentally, Anurag spoke on Sunday, and you have spoken. So,
yeah, I heard from some of our batchmates that he indeed spoke very well. So amazing. I was not able to kind of join that day because right now we are focusing. I had a long call with UAE, how we are going to kind of prepare, because again, it's a different challenge which has come up there. They have told all schools to be closed till June end. So July and August is traditionally the summer vacation there, and then you'll restart only in September. So in that uncertain environment, through our virtual classes, of course, we are doing that. But still, collection of fees is an issue because we can't tell a parent saying that, look, I will not give you username or password if you don't pay the fee. So which means that is something we can't do. We will have to support their education. But the reality is that, yes, the revenues of cash collection is getting impacted. How do we now allow parents to pay on a monthly basis? How do we kind of create some sort of pay modules for them? We are thinking that, look, now we need to think through like finance companies. Can we create an EMI solution for some of the parents who genuinely have some hardship? And they are very, very supportive, saying that, look, I can't pay you today, but allow me to maybe pay in some installments, etc. So those are some of the nuances. So that's why I was not able to kind of join Anurag's presentation. But I hear from some of our friends that went off very well.
Sure. So thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Kaustubh.
Nice
And thank you, AMP.
Stay home, stay safe, guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, KV. Thanks, Nikhil.
Thank Nikhil. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for that.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
See you.
So, Nikhil, I'll close the meeting then.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. See ya.
So much. Thanks. Bye.